When they go after Virginia, they're essentially sending a signal to every other election official across the land: you remove non-citizens from the list, we're going to come after you. So another major section of the book, as I noted, is the election controversies. We talk about 2020. We talk about the need to make sure voting rolls are cleaned. We talk about the need for voter ID. Again, it's pretty clear cut where Kamala Harris stands. There's this video from 2021 where she's attacking voter ID.
Is agreeing to voter ID one of those compromises that you'd support?
I don't think that we should underestimate what that could mean. Because in some people's mind, that means, well, you're going to have to Xerox or photocopy your ID to send it in to prove you are who you are. Well, there are a whole lot of people, especially people who live in rural communities, who don't. There's no Kinko's, there's no Office Max near them. People have to understand that when we're talking about voter ID laws, be clear about who you have in mind and what would be required of them to prove who they are. Of course, people have to prove who they are, but not in a way that makes it almost impossible for them to prove who they are.
Well, there you have more word salads from her, obviously opposing voter ID. 80% of the country supports voter ID, and Ms. Harris doesn't. And sure enough, her Justice Department, the Biden-Harris Justice Department, in a brazen disregard for election integrity and, frankly, a brazen endorsement, effectively, of non-citizen voting, sued the state of North Carolina to stop them from removing, Virginia, that's right. They've sued North Carolina on voter ID many times under Obama. But in Virginia, they have a program to remove non-citizens from the voter rolls, and on a case-by-case basis. Now, Judicial Watch has used the law called the National Voter Registration Act that requires states to clean up the rolls quite effectively. We've, through that process in the last year and a half or 2 years, removed upwards of 4 million names from the rolls, dirty voting names. And what did the DOJ do to help us? Zilch. Nothing. But they're pretending that law requires states to leave non-citizens on the rolls, even if they know they're not supposed to be there and they are non-citizens. Glenn Youngkin talked about it, the governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, the other day, and explained what his law does.
That bill was signed in 2006, and it requires us to use DMV data where people self-identify as non-citizens to then go through a process of removing them from the voter rolls if they're on the voter rolls. And guess what? That's exactly what we've been doing. It's been happening for 18 years. Democrat governors, even Terry McAuliffe and Ralph Northam, used this process all the way up through into October. Someone walks into the DMV, they identify themselves as a non-citizen. Somehow or another, either by accident or by purpose, they register to vote. They're on the voter roll. We go through a process of notifying the registrar that they need to be told that if they cannot affirm their citizenship in 14 days, they're taken off the voter roll.
And I think they have a similar lawsuit against Alabama, who has taken steps to try to clean up the rolls of non-citizens. And to me, it's an endorsement of alien voting by the Department of Justice. I talked a little bit about it on with Charlie Kirk earlier. I think it was earlier today. I don't think. I know it was earlier today. I'm not that out of it. Let's run that.
Can you walk through that? How dirty voter rolls are the original sin of broken elections?
You highlight when you have mass mailing of ballots and you have voters who shouldn't be there, there's a good chance voters who have moved away or who are dead are going to get ballots in the mail. or there's a chance because the names have been old and people know, and fraudsters track this. You know, the parties track this. It's available to everyone who's voted recently, who's likely moved away. And you can, just because you're inactive and haven't voted for a long time, you're still on the registration list, and votes can be made in your name. So if there's no voter ID, or as you point out, the balloting takes place away from the voting place, meaning unsupervised voting through the mail, it's much easier to get away with fraud voting in someone else's name. And we don't have to prove whether it happens or not. That's the risk, and that's why the law requires the states take reasonable steps to clean up the rolls. The left doesn't want to do anything reasonable to curtail voter fraud, or the concern that Americans have that, what do you mean you're not taking dead people off the rolls? Are you expecting us to believe the election is going to be honest if that's the case? They don't want to clean them up. And as I said, the Justice Department and the left fight us. Well, in this case, the left fights us tooth and nail. All these Soros operations, all these Mark Elias type groups are coming in and trying to stop us from cleaning up the rolls. And on top of it, the other big issue, I think, this year, Charlie, and I'd be interested in your views on this, is the counting of ballots after Election Day. I don't think it should happen at all. In the least, counting ballots that arrive after Election Day is anathema. And the federal law sets an Election Day. Taking ballots in after Election Day and counting them is obviously contrary to law.
Correct.
But 18, 19 states do it. We have a big case in Mississippi. They count ballots that arrive for 5 days after election. In Illinois, they allow ballots to come in for up to 2 weeks after Election Day. California, it's 7 days. And, you know, those states, you may say, may not impact presidential campaigns, but they certainly impact other campaigns as well. Plus, it undermines voter confidence. Counting ballots after Election Day invites voter fraud, undermines voter confidence, and I would argue is illegal.
So that's what the DOJ should be focused on, right? Enforcing federal law, cleaning up the list. And when they go after Virginia, they're essentially sending a signal to every other election official across the land: you remove non-citizens from the list, we're going to come after you. And I talked about it further on Fox News a few days ago.
Meantime, the DOJ has filed a lawsuit against the state of Virginia over Governor Glenn Youngkin's executive order to purge voter rolls inside 90 days of the election. We want to discuss this legal challenge with the author of Rights and Freedoms in Peril, an investigative report on the left's attack on America, Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton. You know how much I love having you here, and in particular when it's a storyline like this one, because if you're an American, you don't want to be disenfranchised by having people on the voter rolls who either are passed on, moved out of state, or have no legal right to vote here. And yet the DOJ is fighting cleaning up the voter rolls. What could they possibly be thinking?
Well, you know what they're thinking. It's the last minute, and they want to stop a state from doing what they're supposed to do day by day, which is to make sure non-citizens aren't on the rolls. And when they find them, they need to remove them immediately. And what they're doing is they're flipping a law that Judicial Watch has used successfully to remove 4 million people from the rolls over the last 2 years or so, a law that requires the states to take reasonable steps to clean up the rolls. They're saying, well, that law means you can't remove these people. And it doesn't really fit because... So that's where we are. The Justice Department comes down on the side. By the way, that Justice Department, the agency that runs these litigations, the Civil Rights Division, the voting section, you name it, all these internal bureaucracies within the Justice Department, it's all run by leftist liberals. Mostly Democrats, you can be sure. I mean, I'm not aware of any conservatives working over there. I mean, my colleagues used to work at the Justice Department. They worked in those divisions that enforce federal election law. When they left, virtually no one was there who shared any conservative values, any traditional approach to enforcing the rule of law on elections. I mean, now we have the Justice Department suing to make it more likely for non-citizens to vote in our federal elections. And when the left says, how dare you suggest that we want aliens to vote, that non-citizens to vote in federal elections. Well, their Justice Department is making it easier for them to do so, quite explicitly 3 weeks before the election. So we're right to draw those conclusions, I think, that the goal of bringing in these invaders by the millions is to allow them to vote illegally. I've often noticed that the issue with immigration from the left, it's never been about getting the Hispanic vote. It's about getting the illegal alien vote. And we have proof of this in the great Commonwealth of Virginia and down in Alabama, where the Biden-Harris Justice Department is making it now nearly impossible for Virginia to remove non-citizens from the rolls. Same goes in Alabama, sending a signal nationwide. Hey, non-citizens, if you've made it this far, who knows? Maybe you'll be able to vote. Very dangerous in terms of election integrity. So we'll be monitoring this. We'll be trying to get information about what's going on there, in addition to pursuing our own litigation and election watchdogging. But along those lines, I have an important new educational video to share with you. We created this to help explain the issue of cleaning up the voter rolls. I'm going to provide a separate link to it below so you can look at it and share it with your markets, as I say, your friends and family and colleagues and such. And it explains Judicial Watch's concerns about dirty voting rolls and counting ballots that arrive after election. Take a look at this new wonderful video that we developed to educate the American people on the issue of clean elections.
When it comes to elections, Americans want and expect them to be fair and honest. They don't like voter fraud, and they want common sense measures preventing it from ever happening. Unfortunately, there is an election integrity crisis in our country, and many Americans know elections rules are bent and broken. Too many states have different election laws and procedures that conflict with existing law, while others simply ignore existing election laws or just don't know enough about them. This dangerous combination can cause Americans to feel disenfranchised and lose confidence in our elections. The battle for election integrity is ongoing, and Judicial Watch is on the front lines, doing everything it can to ensure our elections are fair and honest. Part of our work involves getting states to clean up their voter rolls in compliance with a law called the National Voter Registration Act, or the NVRA. This law contains provisions requiring states to clean and update their voter rolls by removing people who have passed away or simply moved to another state. Unfortunately, many states haven't cleaned up their voter rolls in years, and the federal government hardly enforces the NVRA at all. And as a result, dirty voter rolls increase the likelihood of fraud in elections. If a mail-in ballot is sent to a voter who no longer lives at their address or died, and if their voter registration information isn't updated, anyone living there could simply submit the ballot using the prior resident's identity. The potential for voter fraud exists, and that's where Judicial Watch comes in. Our team of investigators and attorneys are hard at work regularly reviewing voter roll data from across the country. We send notice letters and even file lawsuits against states to make sure voter rolls are cleaned up as the law requires. Because Americans know dirty voting rolls can mean dirty elections. Over the past 2 years, Judicial Watch's litigation resulted in 4 million ineligible names being removed from the voter rolls. In a historic victory for election integrity, a lawsuit we filed against the state of California resulted in the removal of 1.2 million ineligible names from voter rolls. Now, California is at less risk for voter fraud. Judicial Watch also settled a lawsuit against New York City after it removed over 566,000 ineligible names from the voter rolls, and it promised to take reasonable steps going forward to clean its voter registration lists. In North Carolina, our litigation resulted in the removal of over 430,000 inactive registrations from its voter rolls. And in Pennsylvania, Judicial Watch forced the removal of nearly 180,000 ineligible registrations from the state's voter rolls. It isn't easy cleaning dirty voter rolls. It takes a lot of time and effort. But Judicial Watch is happy to do the work the government does not want to do. States can try to stonewall us, but our team of lawyers and investigators are prepared to fight these legal battles in court. While some states don't update their voter rolls, others allow votes to be received and counted after Election Day, in violation of existing election law. Congress recently reaffirmed a single national election day when it passed the Electoral Count Reform Act. Federal law says the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November of every even-numbered year is Election Day for federal elections. There is just not supposed to be an election week or even an election month. Extending the counting of ballots runs counter to federal law and invites fraud and undermines voter confidence. Right now, Judicial Watch is suing Illinois and Mississippi for allowing ballots, including mail-in ballots that may not even be postmarked, to be received and counted days and weeks after Election Day if the ballots are dated on or before Election Day. As you can see, Judicial Watch is hard at work ensuring our elections are fair and honest. And you can be assured we are ready to do the heavy lifting to make sure they stay that way, because no one is above the law.
So we'll post a link below to that video. I encourage you to share it so others understand about these essential election integrity issues. As I've been noting, these issues won't go away with the election. The election will be cleaner as a result already of Judicial Watch's heavy lifting. But as I've been noting, we have ongoing lawsuits right this minute in Illinois, California, one planned for Oregon. We have Mississippi, Illinois again over the counting of ballots after Election Day. And so we're just going to keep on keeping on, hopefully with your support. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.